Hi, welcome to Resolve Mastery. If you haven't been here before, this channel is dedicated to Blackmagic's designs, DaVinci Resolve. My name is Brett Truitt. I've been a professional editor, visual effects artist, and VFX supervisor for over 20 years in Los Angeles, working on some pretty high-profile projects. You can check out my IMDb link if you're curious about that. Anyway, today what we're going to do is we're going to talk about this shot right here. If you haven't been here before, I do these kind of demos, or I've only done one. This is only my second video, where I basically kind of walk through how I would approach a certain shot. That's what I did the last time. So the last time, if you haven't watched the first video, I just basically go through the process of pulling a green screen and doing a little bit of color correction on a shot. Today, I'm going to do it a little bit differently. I'm going to take a shot that I've already finished and kind of deconstruct it for you. Talk about what's going on. And I'm really curious, if you don't mind getting down in the comments of this video or the other, if you watch both of them, and tell me which method you might prefer. I also offer one-on-one Resolve tutoring sessions on my website, resolvemastery.com, if you're curious about that. You get a free 15-minute consultation. Kind of what I'm doing with this is seeing if I can translate that experience to a YouTube video. So that's what we're going to do today. All right, so let's take a quick look at the shot.
Thou nature art my goddess. To thy law my services are bound.
So this is the first shot in a short film that I shot 6 months ago. It's Shakespeare's King Lear, the character of Edmund. I think it's scene 2, act 1, scene 2, the opening. It's pretty close to the beginning of the play. Anybody who's paid attention to me at all on my other channel, Weird Beautiful Things, knows that I'm obsessed with Shakespeare. Speaking of that, there is a part 1 to this video that we're making here today on that channel, Weird Beautiful Things. That's my other channel that I've been making, or one of my other channels. I'm a little ADHD, so I got 3 channels going right now. Anyway, so that channel, I made the first part of this, which is all about, this is a virtual production shot, in case you couldn't tell. But I wanted to kind of show you guys what I did to get here, because I also promised on that other video, which is all about the process of using Jet Set Cine and Unreal Engine. So we used an iPhone in production, where we mounted it on the production camera, which is a Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K. And it tracks the camera movement. So that camera movement you saw, the CG, was all generated by a phone. And then we rendered out the tracking, or the tracked shot, in Unreal, and then brought it into DaVinci Resolve Fusion in order to build this shot. So what I'm going to do today is talk about the fusion side of it and the color correction side of it, kind of where I am right now. Like I said, I may end up doing some more work on this shot. I probably will. But I thought I was in a pretty good place to show you guys what I did, and hopefully it might help you if you're doing any kind of this kind of work. And like I said, if you want to check out the video on my other channel, Weird Beautiful Things, I'll try to put a link. I'm not sure if I can link to another channel yet. I'm still a little bit new to this YouTube thing, but I'm having fun, and it's really kind of the direction I want to go. I think I'm definitely moving away from the traditional Hollywood model. If you're curious about that, I've got a couple of vlogs on that channel where I talk about why I'm doing what I'm doing now. Anyway, for now, let's go ahead and switch. So here it is in our timeline. As you can see, it's currently a compound clip. Now, I haven't been real good about naming stuff, right? Because I'm middle of work, but I wanted to shoot this video, so you're going to see some of the slop that I do. It's always good to name things and keep things a little organized. Right now, this project is a little disorganized, but that's okay, because that's reality. And one of the things I want people to see with this is, like, I can work through real world situations with you. Anyway, so let's take a look what's going on inside of this compound clip. We're going to talk about the compositing first, and then we will get into the color correction. So let's go in here. We do this right click, open in timeline, and there we are. Now we've got a 3-layer timeline. So what is going on with these layers? Let's turn that one off. Okay, so that's the part of the set that's in front of him. Okay, that makes sense. Then I'm guessing, if you know how any kind of editing system works. You've got a 3-layer timeline. What's on top is literally what's on top in your comp too, right? So that's the wall. This is Daniel, our actor. Yep. And this is the background. You're going to notice one other thing about this stuff before we get too much deeper. This is also a compound clip. We'll talk about why that is in a second. And there is a cut and some sort of time warp on both the background and that foreground element. That's because we had a little bit of camera shake. When you run Jet Set Cine, you have to run a cooling system on the phone frequently because it actually heats up the phone quite a bit. So I had a little bit of a cheaper camera cooler on it. I've since upgraded to a newer one that caused the camera to shake. So we had to negate that. When the camera move stopped, I didn't want the camera to continue to shake. And that's what was happening here. I'll show you quickly. You see how the camera's still moving there? That is NG, otherwise known as no good. Yeah. So I did a freeze frame to fix that issue because we got that little bit of camera shake that I didn't really like. All right, so that's what the freeze frame is. And we have a 3-layer comp that's just built right here. But let's talk about how we got this middle layer, because that's the most interesting part of this. So if you choose that, you see these 3 little stars right here. That means that there is a Fusion comp here. So if we right click on it and we say open in Fusion page, look at that. Now we're looking at our composite, our messy composite with probably, oh, there is some stuff that's named. Look at that. I did name some things. I did some organization. All right, so let's talk about what this is. This is our plate, basically. This is our shot. Right now it's showing the alpha channel. If I hit the A key, it'll show us the actual shot. So you can see we got an actor on a green screen stage. We actually have a bunch of rigging around him, but we'll take care of that. We've got some lighting. We got some shadows. We can see a little bit of the floor. All right. The good news is if you look over here, so viewer 1 is just the plate. Right now, viewer 2 is media out, which is actually what we're sending back out to resolve to the edit page, to color and everything else, right? So this is all uncolor corrected at this phase. This is the raw footage. I am color managing. These are actually raw shots. I'm experimenting with a slightly new color management versus what I showed in the other video. That is an old school color management way of working, and I like the way the Resolve panels work with that setup, because these color spaces the panels are sometimes color space aware. So depending on what color space you're working in, the panel actually behaves differently. So, but I'm experimenting with this. This is the more modern way of doing things, and I'm trying to do it. Anyway, I'm not going to get into color management too much, but that's what I got going on. So right now, all we're seeing is a color managed version of this, but not a color corrected version. All right, so the first node you're going to see after the plate, we're going to just kind of go left to right. This thing is more or less organized left to right. So we'll look at it that way. So it's this noise reduction. So let's kind of see what that's doing. So in order to see any node's output, just drag it into a viewer, or you can, this is viewer 1, this is viewer 2. If you look closely at my flow or my nodes, viewer 1 and viewer 2 are both active. Viewer 3 is actually my monitor behind me. If you're looking at the little video, you might be able to see it. But that's in linear color. So if you really want, if you do want to use an external monitor, you probably want to put a LUT and a separate output. I can show you that. That's actually a useful technique. So if you work with any sort of a video capture card or any kind of device that basically allows you to send a true, accurate video signal out of Resolve, you may want to do this. Anyway, so let's talk about how you do it. It's a simple thing. So here's your media output. If we were looking at this, this would be the output of the shot. We'll put number 3. See that? So right now it's still in that really high contrast linear color. If you want to fix that, you come up here to your effects and you type in, well, actually we can just go to LUTs. How do you type it in? It's quicker to do it this way. VFX IO. So what we want is a linear, here's a bunch, something like this, linear to gamma 2.2 is probably perfect. We'll drag that in, we'll hook that up, then we'll put that on the monitor. I'm going to press the 3 key. Look at that. If you can see that on our little monitor, here, let's see if I can switch this real quick. Either way, I think you can see it, yeah. And then this is without on the monitor. So it helps you to look at the linear color. So anytime you want to look at something on that monitor, an external monitor, you probably want to apply a LUT here. Okay, so let's continue talking about this. So the noise reduction is the first phase because we like to get rid of some of the just inherent noise in here. Let's see if we can see it. We can zoom way in. Go to noise reduction. Let's turn it off for a second. There you go. I click this little guy right here, this little toggle to turn the noise reduction on and off. So you can see it's helping to clean up the shot, and it helps with our keys. We've got 2 keys on this shot. So the reason I do the noise reduction, it's only feeding the keys. If you look where it's going, basically the noise reduction is feeding that node and that node. These are both delta keyers. I call this the hair keyer and this one the body keyer because I did 2 separate keys in order to get, and I frequently do this. This is a technique I use, I think, even on the other video, because hair is such a tricky thing to key. I like to do things a little differently on the hair than I would do on the rest of the body. Now, if I got somebody with a shaved head, I lucked out, it's a lot easier. But if you got anybody with any hair, and depending on what the hairstyle is, it can get tricky to do keys on this. So I frequently will do 2 keys, one for the hair, one for the body. So these are both delta keyers, like I said. Now you'll notice if you look at this node graph versus what I did in that other earlier video, we're not using a clean plate here. Mainly that's because it's not as effective. The technique's not as effective, and that has a lot to do with the fact that this is a moving camera, as you saw when we looked at the shot earlier. So I'm just pulling the keys right here in the delta keyer. So you can see I did 2 different green samples. It's all based on how good the key looks. When I start the sample, I usually have the alpha channel up so I can really kind of see how it's being affected. Now you see we still got a little bit of issues down here, but most of this I think is covered. I might clean this up a little bit later on. We could even try to do it right now. Here, let's see what we can do. Why not? Let's see if we can make it a little better. Go back to the matte. There we go. I cleaned that up a tiny bit more. Should be good. All right. So that's our body key. And then let's look at the hair key. You see the difference? Because right here, I'm only really using this part of it. We've got this polygon over here. Like if we look at that. There you go, the combined matte. There, so we're tracking that shape along with his head to keep it separate so I can use that hair keyer up there. Okay, so the hair keyer, body keyer, both delta keyers. I made some adjustments, blurred it, eroded, dilated it, pulled the key, played with the balance. A lot of that I cover in my other video. So if you're curious about that, check it out. But keying is just, it's an art. You learn what the different tools do, and you start to get better at it. The more you do it, the better you get at it. This shot isn't nearly as well shot as the one that I was working on in that other video. This was 6 months ago. I was learning a lot. I'm a post guy. I've got a tremendous amount of post-production experience, but my production experience is pretty limited, and most of it was when I was directing and I was not running camera at that point. So I'm still getting up to speed on the camera part of things. But this is 6 months ago, and my game's obviously improved. My game's even improved from that video that I showed you the other day. I started shooting things a little bit differently than I had shot on that one. Anyway, it's all a learning process, as we know. So we got these 2 keyers. Then we kind of come over here. Let's take a quick look at what we've got going on. We've got this matte combine. This is where I take the body and the hair keyer and I put them together. And remember, I showed you this node here. Let's look at the matte combine output. And you see my circle up there, this little polygon, that's this tool right here. It's just a simple matte. And it's got some tracking that was done here with the Fusion tracker. It's got this new IntelliTrack. I believe it's AI driven, does pretty well. I tracked, as you can see, here's the part on his jacket or on his chest. Looks like I might still have couple of light spots in there that I'll probably have to fix later on. But the goal, as I've said before, is to get a pure white, gray, where you've got hair and things that are kind of a little see-through, and then black. We're getting pretty good here, and I did do some additional cleanup, so I might have already fixed that. We'll talk about that as I go along. But really what you've got going on here is you've got these 2 delta keyers feeding this node, which is one of these, matte control. And I renamed it so I could tell it what it is. It's called matte combine here. So it's taking these the 2 mattes developed by the delta keyers here and putting them together and using this tracked matte that's somewhat hand tracked and somewhat tracked with a tracker. to define where you're going to put the two nodes together, right? So that's what's happening here. And I'm doing that using this combine alpha. Whenever you're using a matte control node, be sure you turn on your pulse multiply image. It'll save you a lot of headaches, trust me. Unless you have a reason to not have that on, which I rarely have found instances where that's not going to be on, where you would not want that turned on. All right, so this is another matte control. I did not rename this one. So I'm doing a secondary fix, and I think this is where I fixed the chest, actually. Let's take a look here. Yeah. So there's this thing on his chest. We remember we noticed that earlier. We still got some light gray areas maybe around here that I should probably deal with. That's probably this matte causing that problem to some degree. Let's see. Yeah. I just made a new keyframe, which should help a little bit there. Anyway, so, you know, that's the process, is this constant refinement, constantly. You do the big moves with the delta key or the clean plates if you're going to work in that method. And then you do the matte combines where you maybe one area of the image gets one type of key and the other gets another type of key. You use tracking. You can use the magic mask. I did try that on this to do some rotoscoping, but it wasn't great. That's hit or miss, but it's a useful technique in a lot of circumstances. It didn't work great on this shot. That's magic mask I'm talking about. So we've got another tracker tracking this matte, which is on his chest, to kind of clean up some areas on his chest that were giving the key was not working. The last matte control I have, which I've renamed again, plate combine, it's taking the plate and the final matte out of this matte control, combining them, and again, what have we got here? We've got something. Let's see what that is. Oh, yeah, that's a matte paint. So that's a matte paint node. Or a mask paint is what they call it. That's a nice way if you've got any last minute tweaks you want to do your matte and you don't want to do a bunch of tracking. Maybe there's 1 or 2 frames that break because the matte fails at one point or another, the key fails. So you can paint. You can literally paint right on your matte and fix it. I use that technique a lot. It'll lead you, all you do, positive and negative. You can do white or black. You can basically, it's a good way to just clean up little errors in your matte, right? So that's at the last phase on our plate combine. And then the plate combine, if you look at this node tree, it's going a couple places. The first one, it's going right out to media out. So that basically this guy right here, or we can even look at this node. They're going to be the same. It's just that the checkerboard is transparent. So I can put whatever I want behind that. And that information, that alpha channel will travel out to the edit page and to the color page. And we can work with all these elements separately on those pages. That's why I like to work that way. But you'll notice I also do something else. I plug in the background. That's this node right here. Let's take a look at it. All right, it's actually one more node, and we get the foreground too. So if you watched my other video where I rendered the background out of Unreal Engine, I showed you the setup briefly of how you get a multi-layer EXR sequence, and that's what we got here. So one layer is background, which is just this. The other layer is foreground. Remember that? If you watch that video, I think I called it wall, but I make a separate layer. As a matter of fact, I can quickly look in this foreground layer and find out what that layer is called. Final image wall. So that's the layer I've selected. So when you've got a multi-layer EXR, you've got this option here, which shows you the different layers. When it's at 0, you get basically the comp as it was rendered. But if you've made layers, you can do something like this and get that layer out. So what I've done is I've merged our keyed actor with the background, and then I went and did a second merge with the foreground. So this is the same element, and I just dragged it into my media pool. So that was brought down into here, and then you see I've got my layers. So there it is. And then I made a copy of it and made the second layer, and then I merged them, and that's what all that is. So I can see the comp inside of here. It's nice so I don't constantly have to jump back out to see how the comp is looking, but there's no real color correction in here. And I don't do the entire comp in here because it actually is easier and better in many, many ways to do some of the compositing in the edit tab and the color tab, especially when you want to color correct things separately. So I like to be able to color correct my actor separately from my background, and it's just easier. You can also output a matte from this comp, And that does work. However, I've found that if you're doing extreme color corrections, it will sometimes break the composite. And this is a more kind of tried and true technique in my experience. So I build the comp right here in Fusion just for viewing, but then I send just our actor, this guy, straight out to edit. So let's go out to edit. So here's what I've done. I want to show you a couple things. So we were looking at this composite right here, right? Now we're going to talk about layer 1, which is, let's turn off these other 2 layers. That's just our background. Again, let's match back. I'm going to hit Alt F. So Alt F is a great, Alt F. Alt F will take me right to something, whatever I've got selected here in my project, or in my media pool. That's the word I'm looking for. Media pool. Media pool. So, so this is actually a render of a previous composite. So if you do a render, I've done what's called render in place. This guy right here with this background. It will speed up your process if you're noticing your system slow down. It's not a bad idea to do renders in place. I'm going to quickly decompose this so that we can look at the original for a second. Decompose to original. We'll open this in Fusion now. And what you're going to see is that it's more or less that composite that we just built, but I've connected now the background, we've got alpha channel, A, remember, to media out. So I basically just used that little comp where I built it inside of Fusion, and now I'm separating out the layers. So there's the background sent to media out. So that's what you've got on this edit layer 1. I'm going to undo my decompose because I lost my color correction and various things. We'll talk about color correction in a little bit. But that's what that is. So I basically just took that comp, plugged the background into media out, and then that's my new layer. So after I did this full comp, I made a copy on each of these 2 layers, on layer 1 and layer 2. And then I did the same thing up here. Now this one's a little different because there's a compound clip. Let's talk about why we're doing that. So I'm going to reactivate it. Let's reactivate this. I'm just hitting the D key to turn clips on and off, right? So now we've got our comp. Now this is still, we're not at a full level. We're still actually, remember, look here, we're in this compound clip here. The cut Brett, that's our actual main timeline. And we can have that over here. This is actually what the shot looks like. Finished. We're still here at this phase. We'll talk about what we got to do to get to that phase, but right now we're talking about this. What's going on in this compound clip? Let's do open in timeline and figure out what we got. So it looks like we've got another comp here. Let's find out what's going on in that one. Open in Fusion page. Okay. So this one has got foreground. That was our shot that looks like what we see right there, right? Then it's got this thing called foreground 1. Let's take a look at that. What is that? I'm going to show you what that is because I'm going to disconnect this blue line for a second. Look how the whole thing comes back. So that foreground 1, the second foreground, if you look at the layers, it's giving you the whole image. What I'm using is that foreground as a matte. The reason why is when you composite directly with this foreground layer, you get a little bit of a dark line around the edge. If you do it this way and just use it as a matte on the full image, which right now you don't see because we've got that matte turned on, but if I disconnect it, you can see it again. I get rid of that dark black line. So that's why I do it that way. And that's why we're in a compound clip, because I needed to keep this composite intact. I didn't want to make a break here and do the freeze frame. So I kept it in the compound clip 3. Again, these things are horribly named right now. I would, if I were being more organized, be naming these things with rational, meaningful names, and I encourage all of you to do that. But when you're in the midst of battle, you do what you got to. All right, compound clip 2. So back to that, that's our multi-layer. Remember we said we do these with these freeze frames right here to get rid of the little bit of camera jitter that we've got. Okay, this 3-layer composite has some color correction going on. If you jump over to the color page, you see these little rainbow squares around our clips. Clips up here, down, turn them on, turn them off. You can also do that in Fusion, by the way. That's a nice feature in Fusion. Allows you to step through your edit in color or Fusion a little bit faster and easier and navigate your layers and things like that. All right. So if they've got these little rainbow squares, they've got color correction. Now, notice something right here. This one, you can see the nodes. This one does not show any nodes. This does not show any nodes. Now, these two don't appear to have any color correction. That's actually because the color correction is happening inside of the compound clip. What's happening is our background, since we're dealing with all these layers, we're using a group to color correct our background. So if you click on this clip, which says it has color correction, and you go to group pre-clip, oh, there's our color correction. So you right click on this shot. So you come here and you go, look at this. We've got groups. We've got a group called Castle \. That's a typo, by the way. But basically, I assign all of those shots to this group, and then they all get the same color correction. And if I make an update to this color correction, all of those shots, the color correction ripples through every shot that's in that group. I don't have to go and find each one and fix it. That's why I do it this way. Now the compound clips are not in that group because they are in the group inside of the compound clip. Let's open this up. Oh, sorry, I'm trying too many things. There we go. Open in timeline. If we hit in here, then we go over here. Now see, there is color correction. And if you go up here to the group pre-clip, oh, there it is. And you can see right here, if we see groups, this has got the check mark. It's in that group. All right. So there's a little bit of what we did in the color. So basically what I did in color, more or less, these are real simple moves. You can always tell by the little icon right here what's happening in that node. All right. So you got your group clip here, group pre-clip, it's getting the correction. It's getting these three little lines here. That's telling us that there is a color correction here. There's a little bit of adjustment to gamma, lift, even gain, and saturation. So basically I've adjusted contrast a little bit and adjusted saturation on my castle plate to get it to look right. The castle plate, by the way, is color managed. Just if anyone's curious, I'll show you quickly what the color management on that shot is. Here it is right here. Input color space is Rec 709. This is the default color space for renders out of Unreal Engine. However, the input gamma is linear, which is great for visual effects, ideal for visual effects. Unreal's default color space, if you haven't messed with it before your render, is Rec 709 or sRGB. They're the same, by the way. sRGB, Rec 709, same thing. And linear gamma. So back to Fusion. So, no, we're not in Fusion. We're actually in color. That's where we are, yeah. So we've got that color correction going on our castle. And basically that same color correction is applied using the group method to every shot of the castle, every layer, everywhere that it is in our layered comp. Let's go back to the edit page. Let's look at this. So I've turned this on. I don't know if you guys know about this, the basically tabbed, stacked timelines. They're tabs, whatever. Other software calls them tabs. It is tabs, but we're stacking them. We're stacking the timelines. That allows you to kind of navigate your timelines right here, which is kind of a nice feature. So let's go back here. So out of that compound clip, back to this part, that's the compound clip that we were just looking at right there. All the castle layers are getting that group color correction, but let's talk about what our actor is getting. Let's click on him here. So he's got a little bit of color correction too. So we've got, again, this kind of primary situation going on. We've got some lift, gamma, gain going on. We've got some saturation adjustment. We've got some pivot. And let's look at our vector scope for a second. Yeah. So this looks pretty good. Skin tones are pretty good. Like I could separate these out. When I color correct these, I actually do like to isolate these layers. But anyway, if you look at my other video where I walk through this whole process, I do some color correction. The methods that I use in that video are pretty much what I used here. I tried some different things. I used offset a little bit on this one. That's an interesting way to get rid of a color cast using your offset button. Then I've also got these two curves. These are basically dealing with some spill. They're my spill suppression. I do not do spill suppression usually inside of Fusion. I do it inside of color because I like to see how the spill suppression interacts with my color correction. So all of this color correction that we're looking at right here is really to just kind of get the footage back to what I would call a neutral state, where the skin tones look good, the exposure is good, the contrast is good, that you've got everything kind of looking the way you want it if you were just looking at it naturally. Now, obviously, we're dealing with CG in this case, so there's no natural look, but you use your eye and your scopes Definitely learn how to use your scopes if you don't. If anybody wants a video on scopes, I'll do a video on scopes. Otherwise, I'm just going to assume you already kind of know how to use them. Or, you know, come take a class with me and I'll teach you how to use your scopes. We got this correction on him. We've got some spill suppression. That's all well and good. We've got everything in this kind of neutral state. I'm going to turn my other layers back on. By the way, you can get to the layers in your timeline right here as long as you have timeline turned on. That guy right there. All buttons at the top, no matter what room you're in, turn basically these spaces on and off. You've got them over in Edit as well. You've got them in Fusion. You've even got them in Fairlight, all right? So that's what all this stuff up here is. You're turning these spaces on and off. All right, so this is our basic, like I said, flat color correct. We'll go full screen for a second so you can kind of look at it. I'm just trying to get it to look pretty natural. And I think it looks pretty good. But now we'll get to the fun part. So you get this kind of natural look, and then if you own a LUT package or anything like that, you can start playing with LUTs. Or if you're a little more adventurous, you can try to create your own look, which is what I did. And that's what we've got right here. So that's my final phase of color correction. The whole compound clip is there. We actually have some fusion going on here. Let's see what that is. I'm just going to check real quick. Oh, yeah, I added some fog. Interesting, right? So we'll talk about that. Let's look at the color on this real quick. Yeah, so we have a little bit of color correction on this. Again, some primary work. So the reason I kind of color corrected again at this layer is because of what happened in this fusion layer. Remember this? We added this fog effect, which is to simulate a little bit of an environment, right? I want to give it, he's outside. I wanted to give it a little bit of a, you know, not so clear. It's not a perfectly clear day. I add a little bit of fog. So that's what this effect is here. So if we go back to color now, I did this to kind of compensate for what I did there, using both the primary color wheels and the log color wheels. And if you've got a panel, you can usually set it up to work with either one of those just by turning on the log button. I have the micro panel, the old micro panel, and I'm able to do that. So most color panels can do that if you've got one, or you can just switch over to that tab. You know what I'm saying? All right, so let's talk about what happens after that. Timeline. We got two nodes here. Let's turn them on one at a time. That is a vignette. And by the way, you notice that this is letterbox now. This is a 240, I believe. The way I'm doing that is in my timeline, my output blanking is set to 240. Yeah. If I were to reset that, it'll go back to full frame. We don't want that. I like the 240 look, so we're going to go back to that. All right. More cinematic, right? So we've added this vignette, which is really just a shape. You notice the shape button is red now, and you can see it's the little icon there. So we've got some primary corrections and the shapes. So the shape is just this circle with a little bit of softness on. This is an old school colors technique. I love this technique. It's so simple, but it really does a lot to help focus your shot. You basically just put it around the edges and you color correct to taste on those edges. Once I put it on, I'm inverting my shape here. That's what this button does. I've got a circle. I just added a circle and stretched it out, played with the feathering, and then I went over here and I color corrected, tried to dim the image. So these are the adjustments that you've got some gamma and some gain. So that's basically our vignette. Now the last thing is the look. That's what this is. So I wanted a cooler look. I wanted this is a drama. This is a dark drama. If anybody knows King Lear. Now, we didn't do the whole play. We just did this one speech, but, you know, I wanted it to look a certain way. I wanted it cooler. They're supposed to be in like medieval England, even earlier, really, if you look at the text, but we went with a medieval costume. So I kind of went with a medieval castle. You know, Shakespeare it's very flexible in terms of period, but I didn't want it modern. I wanted something that had a kind of a historical ancient feel. So we got this castle, bought it on the fab.com website. I did some modifications to make it work for me, but it came out, you know, the way I bought it for the most part. I was able to use it. But what we're doing here is, again, we're doing some work in our primaries, color wheels, and our HDR. I'm trying to create a look. I'm adding more contrast. I'm playing with these levels. And then the last thing, if you roll over this here, custom curves. That's where I really created my look. So I separated out the channels, I unlink them, and then I basically do some curve work. This is similar if you've ever used Photoshop. You grab the different channels. We're putting points right in the center here. This is more or less your gamma area. We're a little high because the signal on this doesn't go all the way to the top. So this is like your high midtones. I'm playing with pushing some blue into it, pulling some red out of it, and then down here at the bottom on the luminance curve, the Y channel, I'm crushing the blacks a little more to give it a little more of a dramatic look. So that's essentially what's happened in this shot. Let me know in the comments what you think. Anybody interested in signing up for a free 15-minute consultation, go to resolvemastery.com, get on my schedule, check out Weird Beautiful Things if you want to see how we did the Unreal or the Jet Set Cine. I unfortunately didn't really shoot a production behind the scenes video, so there's kind of a pre-production and a post-production. I'm hoping if I could get a crew, somebody that really shoots some behind the scenes, I could do something like that, but right now I'm doing a lot of this stuff on my own. Again, if you want to know the story of why I basically left my Hollywood career to do this, check out Weird Beautiful Things. Check out some of my vlogs. I talk a lot about where I come from, why I changed, who I am. All right, thanks for watching, everybody.